I'm Brian Van, Sportbike Track Gear.com, and today we're going to install a set of Galfer wave rotors on the front of our 2014 STG Road Racing World Honda CBR 1000RR project. But look at this thing. Beautiful. Galfer, one of the biggest names in motorcycle brakes without question. This is their patented wave rotor. What this does, first, it looks absolutely brilliant. Second, it reduces the surface area, you're reducing some weight up front, it dissipates heat better, you're going to get a little increased braking performance and some stunning good looks. When you replace rotors, you should install new brake pads. We have a set of the Galfer centered brake pads we're going to install on the Honda at the same time. While we're talking about that, when you install brakes and rotors, right, a lot of folks instinctively you're going to think, I've got brand new brakes, they should be good to go 100%, right? They're all new. That's not the case. The way brakes work, you need to transfer friction material from the brake pad onto the rotor surface. You see that here on the Honda, on the stock rotors, we've already gone through that transfer of friction material, and that's really what makes the brakes work, is that transfer of material. So, when you put your new brakes on, you need to take this motorcycle out and you need to ride it easy. If you're a street rider, they're recommending up to 100 miles for bedding. That could be a little to the extreme side, okay, but here's what's going to happen. Your first few stops need to be very easy, very gradual. Give yourself much more stopping distance than you normally would. Each and every stop, you're going to feel the brakes get stronger and stronger. You really want to pace yourself. Once again, safe operating distance, extended operating distance to get those pads seated, okay? As they start to come in better, you can brake a little bit harder up until you get to the point where they're completely bedded in. Now, if you're riding on a racetrack, you don't have the luxury of anywhere near 100 miles. So what would you do? What I would recommend is your first practice session, okay? Or if you're a track day rider, your first session, go out there and be very easy. Do it in the parking lot first, right? Get them to seat a little bit in the parking lot. You feel them starting to grab a bit. And your first session, right? Give yourself a lot of room. Do not brake the way you normally would. Allow those brakes to really come in, and you'll feel as the session wears on, those brakes will come in 100%. What happens if you don't do that? You just go out, you just go for it immediately, panic stop, 100%, diving deep into turn one braking situation. You're going to overheat the brakes because there's not enough friction at that point, right? So you apply more pressure, they squeeze harder, it generates more heat. That heat damages the pads, they'll be garbage, and you will warp the rotors. They will also be garbage. You will overheat everything if you don't seat the pads and the rotors in initially the first time. So heed that warning. From here, what do we need to do to change this? Very basic hand tools are going to be used here. A pit bowl front stand, we need to remove the calipers, the front wheel, maybe the wheel over there, work to get the rotor off, right? Simple stuff, and just go ahead and follow me along. We'll replace the rotors in the pad. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the calipers off the motorcycle. Remember, we're going to replace the brake pads. And I showed you this when we did the rear rotor, right? When you replace the pads and the rotors, you're going to for sure need to push the caliper pistons back. When you do that, right, especially on the front, the rears can be a little bit different on a newer bike like this where you don't really need to clean the caliper piston, it's not as important. Now the front, the caliper piston is assuredly going to have some dirt on it. What I don't want to do is I don't want to shove the pistons back in with that dirt all over the outside of the pistons. It can be kind of rough on the seals and such. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean that up a bit before we shove those pistons back in. So you saw I broke loose the retainer, the pins, hold the pads in place, caliper bolts themselves, get that stuff off. Off comes the caliper. You can clearly see if you look in there, right, you're going to see that we definitely have some dust and debris on top of that caliper piston, right? So if you really want to do this the right way, we're going to need to remove the pads from the caliper before we really give the caliper a good cleaning. This should be at least seasonal maintenance. When you are replacing the brake pads on the bike, if you're doing it the right way, this is something that you should be doing each and every time you replace brake pads. Just leave it running and cut.
Yeah.
Okay, clean off the calipers. Use a little brake cleaner. I'm also going to come at it with this little toothbrush because sometimes you see some of that brake dust, that stuff kind of gets cooked down. You gotta remember these operating temperatures inside here can be super, super high. So I'm gonna clean that up real nice, right? Gets that oil off of there. I'm gonna rinse it down. You can see all the nasty dust and stuff coming off here, right? Some folks don't believe in using the denatured, right, alcohol brake cleaner that actually evaporates. I've used this stuff for eons. I've never had any issues with it. I'm going to keep on using it because I don't see a problem with it at all. Now, also, when you push caliper pistons back, right, I feel that it's best to have the bleeder screw open and force the fluid into this little speed bleeder bag that I have. Instead of pushing this fluid and then debris could be inside this caliper up into the braking system, the master solder, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna break this loose, like so. We're gonna bleed the system too, so if we get a little bit of air in it, that is not a worry at all. Go ahead and slide these old pads in here real quick. It's just gonna give me something to keep these pistons aligned while I'm pushing them back into the board. They go back pretty easy when you have the bleeder screw open. Okay? And let's get the other side. Get all four of these bad boys seated perfectly. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and snug this up. We're going to repeat the same process on the other side of the motorcycle. And when we come back, we'll have already done that, and I'll begin removing. Okay, we've got two super clean calipers. They're both chilling out for a minute. You know, another thing people freak out about, okay, is letting this little caliper, this little lightweight caliper, hang from this brake line. I have literally seen one motorcycle hang from a Spiegler brake line, okay? It was lifted by a high-low, connected to the high-low fork with this brake line to not come apart. So if you think this caliper, okay, is gonna damage this brake line, think again. So it's okay to let that hang for a minute. Now, we got pinch bolts and we got axle. Okay, so I'm going to start with the axle. Get that nice and broke loose, thread it out. Now we're going to break loose our pinch bolts. Once we've done that, go ahead and throw the stand under it, lift it up. We're going to get our front wheel off. Take the rotors off. Just like I did on the rear, if you watch me change that rear rotor. I'm going to clean this wheel like there's no tomorrow because it's the best time to clean your wheel is when you've got the rotors off of it. There's so much more access. Alright? Okay. Pit bull forklift front stand. Line that rascal up. And up we go. The axle is already coming out. So, keep an eye on your spacers, keep those with us. And nice little work cart over here. Get our wheel on here. And get my ratchet. Break this loose. Use a good quality Allen here, okay? See that I've got a snap-on Allen bit. This is what I'm going to be running this out of here with as soon as I find it. You use cheap Allen bits. These bolts are tight. These bolts are also typically secured with Loctite, okay? use cheap Allen bits, you run the risk of stripping these bad boys out, okay? And that is no fun. I like to break them loose with the ratchet. These are much looser, right? Require a lot less torque than the rear rotor bolts do. 14 foot-pounds with this. Go ahead and use our T-handle here. All right, when we come back, I'm going to have both rotors off, and I'm going to clean this wheel up perfectly, and we're going to be ready to start installing those super sexy, brand new Galfer Wave rotors. Okay, wheel is clean, right? Especially for a race wheel that's went through an entire season, right? Directionality, okay, and offset. Each one of these rotors, right, has a directional arrow on it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that, you know, we've got it rotating in proper direction. I'll mark that right here, okay? Let's go ahead and just kind of line them up and make sure everything looks to be everything. All right, it all looks good. Also, offset. You know, and it's funny because they make a big note about this, and while this might seem, right, to some, oh, it's super simple, that is incorrect, okay? That is correct. So make sure you read the instructions they include, and also look at the stuff you took off and make sure that you're getting down there the same way. Stainless steel, you want to make sure that there's any oil or anything on it, all right, you're getting that off. You do not want to get that all over your brake pad your first couple of stops. So I'm going to hose this down very nice with a brake cleaner. Lightly wipe it because at the end of the day, the majority of the stuff is just going to simply evaporate after I've rinsed it. Okay. Make sure all your mounting surfaces are clean. You don't want anything in between the rotor and the wheel. Okay. Back of the rotor. Make sure we're in the same position there. Everything's perfect, good, and clean. Rotate that into position. You can clearly see there was some thread locker that was on this. And we're going to go ahead and put a little bit on again. All right. You don't need a ton, just a little bit. We will start by just threading these in by hand, like so. I'm going to take the T-handle to it, right? I'll run them down. You want to use the cross pattern, right, as you get these things torqued. Torque wrench. You can find the torque specs online, right? Every bike, every manufacturer can be different. Google it. You will find it. If you have a torque wrench, use it. If you don't have a torque wrench, make sure you're applying good, even torque, right? And you're using a cross pattern. I'll show you that in just a second. As we get going here. Okay. So, T-handle, and down just about where I want the seat, and let's stop. You can see when I do one, I go directly across from it and do the other. It's going to give you a good even pull. Like so. I'm going to just put a little hand pressure to it. From there, we'll pull out our torque wrench. And make sure every one of these is perfect. If you don't have it, don't freak out. Honestly, I typically wouldn't use it, but I've got it here, so we're going to pull it out and run with it. Okay. So these do not take much torque at all. Okay. When we come back, I will have the other rotor mounted to the wheel, and we're going to head over the bike. And we're going to go ahead and get this wheel back on our motorcycle. All right, we got both the rotors on, everything's torqued. We put a little thread locker on there to be on the safe. I took the opportunity too to clean up my wheel spacers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and slide those into place. Got our axle is handy. Go ahead and lift it up into place. Once again, I really prefer putting a wheel on the ground. I mean, it's a real benefit when you can kind of use your foot to stabilize everything. But we're up on the table, so that's how we're doing it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do here is I like to get the axle threaded in place like so, right? And go ahead and give that a little snug. And then once we begin to tighten the pinch bolts, we'll finish that off. Next up is going to be brake pads. I'm going to get the pads in the caliper. Remember, we've got these calipers squeaky clean, good to go. I don't think this really needs to be said, but make sure your friction material is facing the brake rotor. Definitely don't want the metal backing plate grinding on your brand new rotors. So we're going to go ahead and get everything started here, both sides of the bike. And then there's a little process I like to go through before I tighten the calipers down. And slide that over the brake rotor like so. These bolts, I'm going to run them down a bit, but I'm not going to bottom them out at all. I'm going to repeat this on the other side. So when you come back, I will be in the process of tightening up our calipers on both sides. Okay, I've got the calipers on both sides. Remember, that stuff is all still loose. I'm going to come over here. We need to pump up the brakes. I want to keep an eye on that brake fluid because we did evacuate some of that from the calipers when we compressed the pistons, because remember, I had the bleeder screws open, so you can see I'm watching my fluid level here, and that's as low as I'm going to go without topping it off. So now we need to do a little top off job here, okay, so we can continue pumping the brakes up. Just like I did on the rear, I'm going to give the fronts a nice thorough bleed job, okay? And this motorcycle will be ready for the track. You can see that when the system's low on fluid, how that bladder actually expands out, right? Go over and grab a jug of fluid. Top this off. Yeah, we can continue pumping the brakes up. There is the lever. Okay, now what I'm going to do is rotate the wheel. And I like to use this to just kind of get the calipers lined up, if you will. So I'm snugging the bolts down now after the brakes are pumped up all the way. There isn't a whole lot of movement, but there's a little, and remember, every millimeter counts. You know, you want as little brake drag as possible, and having this stuff aligned with all the parts that are on there can make a significant difference. Come over now. I'm going to snug the pinch bolts on the other side of the axle. Finish tightening my axle. The pinch bolts being tight on the axle side will just keep that from rotating. It's going to give me the opportunity to tighten that up all the way. I'm going to hit these pinch bolts. We've got the caliper bolts. Double check those. Those should be good now. We need to tighten up our pad retainers. Pins that go through the calipers. You can do things to anchor those. You know what's nice? You can use like a dot of silicone. Actually put it on here. You can use thread locker if you want to. The last thing you want to do is lose these, and you have the possibility of the pads falling through and be a mess. Okay, last thing I want to do is just double check one more time. The calipers, make sure we've got good proper torque there. Just to get this motorcycle ready to roll, I want to go ahead and bleed the brakes completely, just as we did in the rear. And then our project is done. I'm not going to show you the brake bleeding now because, as I've said, I've done enough brake work and walked you guys through that process a million times over. But look at the finished result. Okay, this thing looks beautiful. It really gives this motorcycle that real super bike look. Let's cover the whole brake bedding in procedure again. Remember, just because the brakes are all new doesn't mean they're going to work better than they did before. You've got to break them in first. They recommend up to 100 street miles. That's a little to the excessive side, in my opinion. On the racetrack, you won't have that benefit. So for a track rider or even a street rider, ride it around in a parking lot, right? Very easy, slow stops, okay? You'll feel the brakes start to bite, okay? No panic stops, no extreme lever pressure, none of that. Very slow, very easy to transfer friction material from the pad to the rotor, okay? Then if you're on the racetrack, take it out for your first session, your first practice session if you're racing. Once again, all easy stops, really extend the distance, and you'll literally, turn after turn, feel these brakes coming in until you get them to that 100% mark. The better you treat them when they're new, the better they're going to perform and the longer they're going to last. It's really that simple. It is critical you follow that. I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackGear.com. This is our Galfer wave rotor install on our 2014 Honda CBR 1000 RR STG Road Racing World